Hello, and welcome to the language of lower classes and nobles in William Shakespeare's Hamlet, a micro lesson by Miss Best. So the theme statement is, by examining the language used by the lower classes, it's possible to determine that Shakespeare intended them to have equal or higher intellectual ability than the noble and sovereign classes. This is seen through Hamlet's conversations with his peers compared with Hamlet's conversation with the peasants. In fact, at various times in the play, Hamlet appears to have more in common with the lower classes than with the nobility. So in the Elizabethan age, there was a hierarchical structure in society. People were born into specific classes and generally stayed in that class for their entire life. Working hard did not change social status. Clothing, food, marriage, employment, etc. were determined for you based on the family you were born into. The king or the monarch had the highest ranking, followed by the nobles and down to the very lowest in society. Tradespeople were part of the lower classes. The Encyclopedia of Shakespeare's Language conducted an analysis of social class groupings in the entirety of Shakespeare's plays. There are 379 noble characters, that's 27%, and 324 lower class characters, that's 23% of the plays. They also looked at comparing social groups across the three play genres, history, comedy, and tragedy. Histories have the highest number of nobility, while tragedies, which include Hamlet, have the highest amount of lower class folk. Note, within one play there would still be more nobles than lower classes, because Shakespeare wove his stories around the noble classes. His audience, made up of both groups, preferred to see stories based on noble struggles and strife. In Hamlet, there are three types of social groupings: nobles, monarch, and lower classes. Hamlet and his family would make up the monarchy. His close friends would be part of the noble class, and the remainder is in the lower class. Many people find Shakespeare's plays difficult to read and hard to understand. They accuse him of writing in Old English, or believe that during Elizabethan times people spoke in Old English, a language that is unrecognizable today. In fact, William Shakespeare was writing using modern English, but he focused on two distinct styles, prose and verse. Prose is considered normal everyday language, which is commonly used by lower classes in the plays. Verse is spoken by the members of the upper classes and uses the iambic pentameter pattern. This allows for a poetic feel to the language that elevates the speaker to an educated and elite level. When soliloquizing, Hamlet uses verse. "Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew." When Hamlet is speaking to his stepfather, King Claudius, he speaks in prose and uses his condescending tone filled with silly, immature riddles meant to demean the king. Hamlet sometimes slips into a condescending prose whenever berating other characters such as Polonius and Ophelia as well. Hamlet uses verse when speaking to Horatio, a sign of respect. Hamlet meets his intellectual and verbal superior when he speaks with the gravedigger. Here he loses his witty repartee and biting wit and simply aims to avoid the uncomfortable banter with the lower class man. Upon realizing he cannot win a verbal sparring with the gravedigger, he says to Horatio, "How absolute the knave is! We must speak by the card, or equivocation will undo us. By the Lord, Horatio, these 3 years have I taken note of it. The age is grown so picked that the tone of the peasant comes so near the heel of the courtier he galls his kibe. In other words, we have to speak precisely, or he'll get the better of us with his wordplay." So here's a short trailer for a production of Hamlet. Benedict Cumberbatch plays the title role. It's a great way to
What a piece of work is a man.
understand the language.
How noble in reason, how infinite in faculty, in form and moving, how express and admirable, in action, how like an angel, in apprehension, how like a god, beauty of the world, the paragon of animals, and yet to me, what is this quintessence of dust?
Thank you. This is the end of the presentation, and I appreciate your time.